Hello, and welcome to the Mission Report podcast with Chris Dush. I am so blessed today to be with Joshua Inc. He is with Sight and Sound Productions, the theater company that so many people, even though we're 200 miles away, so many people in my constituents, they know Sight and Sound. They've been. Your productions are just outstanding. Noah blew me away. I mean, I've been to Piccadilly Circus and I've done some, seen other theater productions, but because in our passion play at the church, we had animals, live animals there too. And what you guys had to do to control all of that, in addition to everything else that goes on behind stage, is just amazing. But I was listening to you, Joshua, on the podcast for wall builders, and this new area that Sight and Sound is, as you said, maturing into.
Yeah.
I'd like you to go into a little bit about that, and then we'll go into what I'm very excited about, which is this movie that you're doing.
Yeah. Well, Senator, again, thank you for having me and thank you for your service to our community and all that you and your constituents continue to do to blaze the path for us to be able to have the liberties that we have and to be able to do what we do. And we're all one body working together in very different ways. And I think we're all aimed toward the same direction, you know. But yeah, I've been at Sight and Sound for 31 years. Sight and Sound has been around for 50 years. We bring the Bible to life on stage, and now we bring the Bible to life on screen as well, just in a very different way. 5 years ago, after COVID, we started to do feature-length films. And our first feature-length film, I Heard the Bells, premiered in movie theaters November of 2022. And we call it the little movie that could, because it was only meant to be in the theaters for 3 days and it ended up being in the theaters for a month and a half and climbing to number 2 at the box office. And we really had a realization as an executive team and as a board of directors here at Sight and Sound that, you know, for 50 years, the world's been coming to us and now it's time for us to go to them. And
Amen.
so we really felt a call to feature film and not giving up the stage, and not even close. We are firing on all cylinders right now, and just premiered Joshua just a few weeks ago here in our Lancaster stage. Um, but what we're doing with films is we want to tell stories of figures from history that changed the world because Christ first changed them. And so when we looked at that and we say no to a lot of good ideas at Sight and Sound, and we say yes to the God ideas, which are a lot fewer, but usually, you know, obviously take a long time to do. So for the past 3.5 years, we've been working on this new film that comes out. It's in theaters now, actually, in some locations, but it officially releases tomorrow, Good Friday. It's called A Great Awakening, and it tells the incredible true story of Benjamin Franklin and his friendship with arguably the most powerful preacher to ever set foot on American soil, the Reverend George Whitefield. And it was their partnership, their friendship. They were complete opposites, but providentially, the Lord brought them together. And it took Ben Franklin behind his printing press and George Whitefield behind his pulpit to spark the most formative event in American history called the First Great Awakening from 1739 to 1770.
And it's amazing. You actually, when you were thinking about this at first, you were thinking about a different George. You want to tell that story?
I was. I knew that the Lord wanted us to do a film on liberty in time for our 250th anniversary as a nation. And right away, you know, I'm a bicentennial baby. I was born in 1976. So, you know, I've had ideas of a film about the Revolutionary War and George Washington. And I worked for months and months on that. But I continually hit roadblocks with that story. And it wasn't until I went away actually to an Airbnb at Valley Forge, just me and my dog and a campfire. And I really sought the Lord for 3 days. And it was on day 2 that I really heard the Lord speak to me. He said, Joshua, you have liberty, right? You have your Georges wrong. And I immediately thought of other Georges, and I thought of George Whitefield because my writing partner, Jeff Bender, it's his favorite person in history aside from the Bible heroes. And so I started to just research this George Whitefield, and I was completely shocked, blown away, inspired about this powerful evangelist who had the voice of a trumpet, like a supernatural speaking voice. He wanted to be an actor. He got born again in Oxford, England, and he began to preach. Got kicked out of the Anglican churches because his ways were a little unorthodox. And he literally built himself a pulpit, strapped to his horse, and became an itinerant minister. Came over to the colonies in 1739. And from 1739 to 1770, he blazed the trail on the eastern seaboard, 5,000 miles on horseback, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that caught Ben Franklin's attention. And so Ben Franklin thought, I could make some money off of this guy by printing his sermons, his whereabouts, his journals, his personal diaries. And that's what he did. And so little did Benjamin Franklin know, he was actually the greatest promoter of the greatest awakening this country's ever seen.
Absolutely. Even before it was a country. And that was just, I
Exactly.
love that line from the movie with his grandson, where if his grandson asked if he was in the revolution, and there's that pause. And you can, and by the way, the actor for Ben Franklin is just astounding.
Oh, he made me look really good as a director, I'm telling you.
He's from your Missouri Productions.
Yeah, he actually was an actor. His name's John Sneed. He plays the role of Ben Franklin in A Great Awakening. And he actually was on our Lancaster stage and our Branson stage for, it could be 20 plus years that he's been acting for us.
Well, it was astounding, but that pause, and then he was the revolution. That was
Yeah.
just amazing. And I love how you go back to England too with uh, Whitfield and his relationship with the Wesleys and how
Yeah.
that changed. And I've been benefit. I had the benefit of being down at Tim Barton's vault, and I'm standing there. And in government, you have people telling you all the time, "Well, it's a secular nation. There's not,
Right.
God has no place in this. The founders were all deists or whatever."
Yeah.
Franklin was a deist at 19. He announced he was a deist, but then he became involved with the church. He still had problems with the church, not
Right.
with Christianity. I
Right.
held a letter from him and a letter from Thomas Jefferson, to the ones that people talk against their faith all the time. And
Yeah.
as I'm reading the letters, and I'm actually holding their documents in my hands, I'm like, people say these people weren't Christian,
Yeah.
but they weren't Christian, or they didn't have everybody's got their walk that they walk,
Sure.
but you could
Yeah.
tell that these men were walking their
Yeah.
walk to the Lord.
Well, I think if I could just jump in, Senator, I think it's the 30 years that led up to the revolution is what sculpted and shaped these men and women. I mean, they were inundated with Judeo-Christian values being spoken to them, taught to them at school, in their homes. And so they couldn't get through those 30 years without having some kind of a foundation. And I think what this film doesn't attempt to do is it does not attempt to, argue or defend Ben Franklin's faith or any of the founding fathers' faith. That's their own personal journey. Ben Franklin famously says, "If I were to ever have this born again experience, I would never give you or anyone else the privilege of knowing it." And so he's just so prideful that way. And so this film doesn't attempt to answer that question. This film literally sticks to the facts. I would say I could say honestly 95% of this film, if you Google it, you'll find that what we wrote and what we created was true. Now we created dialogue and things and scenarios that might be fictional, but it's all based on truth. And I think that's what our next generation is really hungry for is authenticity and truth. They don't want somebody to perform Christianity for them. They want the real thing.
Yes,
And they also want to see two opposites get along.
yes,
There was two different viewpoints, and Whitfield and Franklin, they argued, but they respected each other. And they actually even loved each other, and so and defended each other, on occasion. But so anyway, I feel like Sight and Sound has always been committed to the truth, bringing truthful moments to the stage and the screen, and then letting the people in the audience determine what they will from those events.
That authenticity is something that I know personally from the work that I'm involved in, how critical that is to people. If they don't see authenticity in you, then we have so many people questioning what is going on in this world
Yeah.
because there is a lack of authenticity. And the fact that it's obvious in the parts of the movie that I've actually been able to see, and also in my experience with the theater productions, you spend a lot of time going over original documents and
Yeah.
work meticulously to ensure that it's where artistic license necessarily has to take place in order to do productions. You've done so with an authentic, trying to stay authentic to the individual and to
Yeah.
the words that they had or would use.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually, you have to be intentional about that. I hired
Yes.
two historians onto this project so that they could go out ahead of us. I wanted to know what the Constitutional Convention was actually like in June of 1787. What were they arguing about? And we actually found the actual minutes taken from those sessions. And
James Madison, yeah.
yeah, you got it. And so, because we didn't want to distract the audience by creating, fictionalized scenarios. We wanted to create truthful atmospheres. But what I'm really excited about with A Great Awakening, which is coming out in movie theaters tomorrow nationwide, is that it is a real foundational and I would even say prophetic message and film on our nation's 250th anniversary. I think a lot of people think our founding fathers woke up on July 4th and said, "Hey, we're self-governing people. Let's go deal with the tyrant across the sea." That's not true. It took 30 years for them
Yes.
to become a self-governing people because of the morals and the Judeo-Christian values that were built into them and taught to them, so that they then could deal with the tyrant within themselves first, sin,
Yes.
and then deal with the
Yes,
tyrant
sir.
across the sea. And that's why this film is so important for people to go and see in the theaters before the confetti and the cannons of the July 4th holiday, where everybody will have their own definition of what liberty is. So I would say this film, like the Liberty Bell, proclaims liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. And it's our responsibility as leaders, as ministry leaders, as church leaders, community leaders, to get people to see this film and understand it and get that into the hearts of men.
Well, that's why I've been working. We've been working to make our schedules work and make this happen. And I'm
Great.
hoping I can get this out as quickly as possible so that people do see it. And I hope it does, like your previous film, get extended beyond the initial screening times because there's a difference between being in a theater or in a movie theater and experiencing this versus watching it on a television screen or
I know.
whatever. And like you said, this will give a true foundation for people to start looking prior to the confetti, like you said, and the fireworks starting.
Yeah.
People really need to. You were born on in 1976. I was 15 at the time, and I can remember
Yeah.
the things that were going on and the celebrations. I'm hoping that we can have the kind of resurgence that we had just a few short years after the bicentennial, and get people motivated to understand and research.
Yeah.
I got into Max Ferrand's collection of the founders' documents. It wasn't just James Madison's documents, but from day one of the convention, it's 4 volumes to the end.
Yeah.
When you listen and understand and you think about the things that they had to go through
Yeah.
and the disagreements and the argumentation, it gives you a greater perspective of the men and also the foundation from where we get our Constitution.
Yeah.
the books of Exodus and Deuteronomy were more often quoted than Montesquieu, John Locke,
Yeah.
and even Blackstone. So
Yeah. True.
people need to start understanding
Yeah.
from whence we came.
Yeah, and I love, in our film, explores the friendship between these two unlikely people and the great awakening that was sparked because of that relationship, that partnership. But the film, and this is not really a spoiler, but the film climaxes with a very, very famous, important speech that Ben Franklin gives to the convention that is almost lost to history. It's not taught in schools, but we have that in our film word for word. We don't omit a single word from it. It's all one take. There's one little cutaway in there, but it's all one take. And it's really the heart cry, of this film is what motivated Ben Franklin to stand up and give that address to those 55 delegates at that time in that room. And it's a beautiful moment in the film, and I think it's something that we all need to hear again. I think that this film could become a banner and an anthem for leaders in our community, in our state, in our country, that we can have a shared experience once again. Have differences, sure, but to have one shared experience once again, like they did at that time. And so that's my hope and my prayer is that this film will inspire and illuminate the lives of many.
Well, we'll close with that, but I will say this: I don't have to hear that speech to know which one it was, because it was one of the few times Mr. Franklin stood and spoke. He usually
Yeah,
gave his speeches to somebody else to read.
that's right.
But what was interesting, and I think it was 12 sentences, he had 14 different pieces of scripture
Yeah.
interwoven to that.
It's incredible. Yeah. And I give you a little fun fact behind the scenes. We shot that scene. This was not a plan or an attempt at all, but the day that we shot his big speech in the convention was election day. And so if the camera would have turned around, you would have seen me wearing an I voted sticker, and you would have seen that on several other people as well. And actually, this is another fun fact. We built the Independence Hall here in our shop at the theater in Lancaster. And my production designer called me one day and he said, "Do you know how many square footage of flooring it's going to take to floor this new space, this space?" I said, "How much?" He said, 1,776 square feet, 1776. And so there's these
Oh, wow.
incredible, yeah, there's these incredible breadcrumb trails of faith that we have throughout this film. The rising sun chair, that's a symbol of this film that George Washington sat in for the
Yes.
convention. There was a carpenter in Pennsylvania that was commissioned for for the bicentennial of the Constitutional Convention in 1987 to build two replicas. I bought one 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the other one is in Harrisburg at the State House, I believe. And so that is in our film. So I bought our very first film prop before this movie was even an idea. And so the Lord is in this. It's providential. We're blessed to be a part of it, and we really hope people go out and see A Great Awakening in movie theaters this weekend.
Well, let's give people the opportunity to find out how to view the show, and it is A Great Awakening.
Yep, it's
People talk
called
about The Great Awakening, but it's A Great Awakening.
The movie is called A Great Awakening, agreatawakening.com, agreatawakening.com, and tickets are on sale right now. If you look at your local theaters and listings, it's going to be in 1,300 theaters nationwide, which is considered a pretty wide release for a feature film. So, what's really cool is we're right up there with the big films that are being announced this weekend, and so we're praying and hoping that this film is illuminated amongst the rest of the films that are coming out.
Well, thank you, and we'll also work when we start getting this thing out. We'll put links to that in the show notes. But
Thank you.
my best to you, the Eshelman family, and all the crew for blessing for this Easter. And Godspeed as any of you have to travel.
All right. Well, thank you, Senator. I appreciate that so much. And, please use, your constituents and the network you have, because I really feel like it's a film for those that are in politics 100%. It's going to really inspire them.
I agree.
All
Thank
right.
you.
God bless you.
God bless you.